The Pentagon is now restoring at least some of those web pages after much pushback, including one honoring Black Medal of Honor recipient Army Major General Charles Calvin Rogers. The website URL had labeled that a DEI Medal of Honor, which the DoD now says was a mistake.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. We've got Chris Goldsmith back on, the CEO of Task Force Butler, which tracks and holds accountable extremist groups across the country. They have an incredible track record. Today, Chris, I want to ask you about what's going on at Arlington National Cemetery, the purging of any mention of, well, they're calling it DEI, but it's really representation in our annals of military heroics, military history. Let's start with Charles Rogers, a Medal of Honor winner who happens to be Black, and what happened to the history of his award on the Arlington database.
Yeah, the Trump administration, through the most underqualified Secretary of Defense in history, Pete Hegseth, have been taking efforts to make the Department of Defense as racist as they possibly can. I think that we should not use their framing or their language. When they say DEI, when a journalist is speaking to them, when a member of Congress is questioning them under oath, and they mention the term DEI, the immediate response should be just say the N-word. Because that's what you mean. When they talk about DEI, they are trying to lift it away from the meaning of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't say those words out loud, right? They've created this boogeyman phrase of DEI, this trigger word that brings in a ton of baggage and racism from the Fox News crowd, communicates a racist idea to them, using dog whistles. So we should challenge them every time that they talk about DEI. We should say, why don't you just say the N-word? Because that's what you mean. And what they've done on these pages that they've restored for these war heroes, these people who are not just, random veterans that they're kind of like picking on. We're talking about Medal of Honor winners. We're talking about people whose image every American is familiar with. Like, if you know anything about history, if you went to high school, even elementary school, you've seen photos of these people. And when they are challenged and they're restoring these pages, these histories of war heroes, they're adding DEI to the beginning of the URL slug. So they're essentially adding the N-word to the URL slug on these war heroes because they are racist. That is what they're doing.
I'm so glad you made that point, because I wanted to bring it up. They didn't acknowledge any error. They put the URL back up so that you can find the history of Charles Rogers. But his medal is not the Medal of Honor. It's the DEI Medal of Honor. And look, we'll put a link in the notes about what he actually did in combat, saving lives, risking his own. And the idea that was awarded because he was Black, especially given the incredible prejudice at that time towards Black soldiers. I mean, I hosted a show for the National Medal of Honor Museum about the Medal of Honor and the number of instances where medals have had to be upgraded from decades ago because the recipients were clearly deserving, but their skin color meant they were downgraded. It's just astonishing that we are back there again.
Yeah. And our country, the United States, for all of its flaws, when it embraces the unique language and background and history of whether they're immigrants or whether they're indigenous Americans, these people, when they join the military, are part of what makes the United States military the most powerful thing on the planet. It's not just about money, right? When you have a highly motivated and skilled force, you are going to have a strong military. You can throw all of the money in the world at a military that's not motivated. Look at Russia, the way that they've just been completely crushed by a much smaller state. it is the Ukrainians being motivated that is making them so effective. It's not just our weapons that we're sending them. So when you look at American history, part of the reason that we have been so effective is because we embrace these things. The Navajo code talkers, they were speaking a language that the Vietnamese did not have a way to decipher, right? That is what they were using the radio, speaking in their native tongue. And that is what allowed them to be secure when they were calling in, friendly troop movements, enemy positions, when they were calling for airstrikes, right? The enemy did not have any way of getting the code, because when they did capture these people and they did torture them, the Navajo code talkers didn't break. And there is nothing more heroic than that. But, we have to be reminded, the current commander in chief, co-president Trump with his co-president Musk, he doesn't like heroes who were captured, right? And that's part of the disrespect that the Trump administration, through Pete Hegseth, is throwing at heroes throughout our nation's history. And it's disgusting.
Hey, it's Ken. Quick break to let you know we've got a Substack page for the Ken Harbaugh Show. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, check it out. A lot of you already have. Thank you so much. And if you're able to, please subscribe. Every dollar goes back into the show to help with research, production, and reporting from places like Ukraine. None of this happens without your support. Thank you. Welcome to the resistance. Some of the most iconic heroes are the ones who raised the flag over Mount Suribachi during the Battle of Iwo Jima. As the bunkers were still smoking, there were still resistors inside Mount Suribachi as that flag was being raised the second time. And now it appears that mentions of one of those heroes in particular have been erased, caught up in this DEI witch hunt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what Donald Trump and his press secretaries, both through the White House and through the Department of Defense, have been talking about is they're saying like, oh, well, we're just trying to erase all efforts to divide the force. So they're searching for keywords like heritage to try to get rid of any honoring of, the federally declared, Trump declared, by the way, February, as African American History Month, right? They are at once erasing history as they try to rewrite it. They're not just erasing it, right? And I think what we should also use to kind of give us a frame of reference as to what their mission is here. They are doing exactly what they have accused anti-racists of when it became a movement to start removing Confederate statues and other monuments to racists and to people who committed things like genocide, right? Remember 2017, the Unite the Right neo-Nazi rally? That was formed around the idea of saving history and stopping a Confederate monument, a monument to traitors, from being torn down. To be consistent with today's value. And their argument, the neo-Nazis argument and the Republican argument, Donald Trump's argument, was that if you get rid of these things, you're erasing history. That is precisely what they are doing right now. And they're not just taking down monuments. They're erasing things from the internet. I know that, the Washington Post, New York Times, military.com, Military Times, Task and Purpose, they're all including links to the Internet Archive. I have no doubt that where these pages have been preserved, the true history, the original version of these web pages, no doubt that the Trump administration is going to go after the Internet Archive next.
I think you're probably right. They have absolutely purged a lot of these images from sites controlled by the DoD. I want to end on this is not an uplifting note, but at least it's a funny note because it mocks just how incompetent this effort is. Have you heard that images on DoD websites of the Enola Gay have been flagged? This was the B-29 that, all right, this part's not funny. This was the B-29 that dropped the first bomb on Hiroshima, named after, I believe, Paul Tibbet's mom, Enola Gay, has the word gay in it. Ergo, it must be DEI. No image of the Enola Gay bomber.
Yeah. And as we always do, trying to bring people like, here's an action item. This is not all just doom and gloom. Veterans Fighting Fascism, which is my partner organization with Task Force Butler Institute, Veterans Fighting Fascism has its own website. And over the last couple of weeks, I've updated the website significantly. And in our list for our anti-fascist book club. Now, a lot of people have been reaching out to me. Tons of veterans reach out to me and say, hey, like, put me in, coach. I want to investigate neo-Nazis. I don't have the resources to do that. We did just get our volunteer coordinator back. We're revamping our training program, but I will never be able to recruit, train, and engage with all of the veterans that want to get involved. So what we created was an instruction manual and guides to get you through your first meetings, from inception to recruiting to vetting to safety to your first 6 meetings of the Anti-Fascist Book Club, because fascism is not just in DC. And we can't just keep focusing on these national issues. If you want to fight fascism, you got to do it in your backyard, because that's where it manifests in a way that affects you and your community. So going back to where we started this conversation from, one of the first 5 books that we recommend that you read in your anti-fascist book club is Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. That is a good starter for people who want to understand this fight that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are engaging in to, use the N-word and include it in URLs, through their coded language, calling it DEI. Ibram X. Kendi walks white people like us, through how to engage in everyday anti-racism. It doesn't mean just going after Hegseth and Trump. It means correcting behaviors that you see, whether it's online or in your real life. It is engaging in thoughtful purchasing power, right? There are things that people can do in their everyday life to be an anti-racist. And in order to be an anti-fascist, you have to be an anti-racist too. So for folks who want to learn about this, want to start their own local community, go to veteransfightingfascism.org. You'll see links and buttons that will bring you to our anti-fascist book club, which will give you everything that you need to get started.
Awesome. I'm glad you made the plug. I was going to ask you for it. Let's end on that high note, Chris. We'll put all the links in the show notes as well. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, brother.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.